Welcome to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast, where power, politics, and the world's most coveted materials collide. Rare earth elements power the backbone of tomorrow's most critical technologies. With China dominating global production, the U.S. and its allies must align strategically to ensure a stable future. This urgency prompted tech entrepreneurs Daniel O'Connor and Dustin Olsen to launch Rare Earth Exchanges, a news and insight platform built to equip stakeholders and decision makers with the tools and intelligence needed to reduce dependency and build prosperous resilience. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast. I am Dustin, your host. I'm joined by my co-host Daniel, and we have a special guest, Nick Myers, who is the CEO and founder of Phoenix Tailings, a company working to extract rare earths and critical metals from mining waste using clean and zero waste processes. Nick, thank you for joining the show. How are you?
Dustin, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great today. It's an honor to be here right before Thanksgiving. We're pretty excited.
Yes, absolutely. And Nick, just dive right in. I'm really fascinated with what you guys are doing at Phoenix Tailings, but can you kind of give us some insight into the original thought or the problem that you were trying to solve with the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually met my co-founder, Dr. Tomas Villalon, at a Bible study of all things back in 2018. And Tomas is one of those super smart people you meet, and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is like, something going on, right? And he's top of his class, MIT, material science, worked in metallurgy, crazy smart guy, but also like kind of out there in general. So we started talking about critical minerals. At the time, it wasn't called that, but it was like trace metals and resourcing and all of what these electric vehicles or missile systems or new cell phones or what everything needed. And at the time, no one cared about rare earths, but we started seeing them more and more in these waste streams. And the fact is, dived a little deeper and they're needed in everything. We actually ended up getting funding from the National Science Foundation to go and interview people all around the world to understand the value chain for rare earth metals. So we actually did 247 interviews with individuals and stakeholders in the rare earth value chain back in 2018. And turns out the midstream processing was a real big problem with rare earths. And we looked at this and we said, no one's doing this oxide to metal conversion. No one's doing this separation thing. And how are people actually getting the raw material? This whole processing chain is really isolated in China. Well, let's go figure that out. So we brought together a team of the rock star scientists, engineers, and top tier folks from like MIT, Northeastern, Harvard, focused on building this platform of technology that underpins this entire value chain, focusing on that first stage of oxide to metal conversion, that metallization component. And that's what we built quite literally in the backyard to start off with. And now we've raised $90 million to date. We're backed by Sumitomo, BMW, Yamaha, Util, some of the top players in the sector, and we're one of the larger commercial producers of the final metal-to-metal alloy, really focusing on that midstream processing with the whole vision to go end-to-end from tailings or waste products that's readily available all the way down to that metal-to-metal alloy with zero waste, zero emissions, but in a fast, rapid way to actually meet the demands of our future.
Wow, that's incredible. And 247 people, how long did it take to do all those interviews?
It was awful. I think it was like a 4-month process. So the NSF has something called I-Core program. And it's like a very, very structured process that was built by Steve Blank, who was one of the founders of like the Lean Startup Business Model Campus, and really rigorous actually. And we went all around the world. I was in Malaysia. I flew back of the bus coach to Malaysia. That's where I met Michael Rosenthal from MP Materials for the first time. And I like begged him for his time to just tell me a little bit about rare earths. And he was so kind and was actually gave us a lot of insight around the sector and understood it. We also met with all the other players like Blue Line, John Blumenthal, and Peter Affany from now at the time Urban Mining and now Novion. Really got to understand the sector in the Western world, but we also talked to the Chinese producers and all the other end players that cared about the sector. And there was a lot, but really, really educational to understand. I think the output of that is that we ended up being one of the very few players that saw every part of the value chain, not just the primary value chain, right? That's the mining, the concentrate, the oxide, and the metal, as well as the magnets, but also the secondary, which is the components going into that, right? The rare earth salts going into that, the HCl that feeds separation, or the caustic, or the sulfuric acid, right? All of those components. And then, of course, the power. In fact, China really runs pretty much all of that globally. So we understood that in depth and we're able to build a business kind of around that.
I was going to say, how would you describe Phoenix Tailings today and where you guys fit into the industry? Because you're not a mining company. You're not on the other end of that. So How would you describe that?
The way I always position us is a technology first producer of the final metals. We want to be the fuel to this future society, right? We're not looking to be the magnet players producing end components. Like, that's not our goal. We want to be able to fuel all the people doing that type of amazing innovation. But we build raw technology at the ground level, but are producers of the metal. So we operate in that midstream processing. We're never going to mine proper material, but we will do recovery from mine waste. For example, we just got awarded 1.6 million from U.S. Department of Energy to be able to go after wastewaters to recover trace metals in there and pull that out. But really where our strength is feedstock agnostic, meaning we could take material from anyone, processing that, doing the separation and doing the final metallization stage, which we just opened a new facility in Exeter, New Hampshire, to be able to produce that at commercial levels and shipping those products out to magnet companies or alloying companies who are putting it into aerospace alloys, or for wind turbine blades as another application for like yttrium metal, for example, one of the other metals we produce.
So I had a question, Nick. First of all, we're big advocates and fans of what you all have done. It's a big deal. It's important.
Thank you.
The technologies, without going into details that you can't talk about, I mean, what's unique or novel about Phoenix Tailings at a high level, to the extent you feel comfortable? Why are you so confident that not only can you produce what you produce today, but you can scale up to, tens of thousands of tons in the future?
Fundamentally speaking, we took a different approach than the rest of the world at the problem of rare earth processing. If you look at why China has adopted all the rare earth processing in the world, like they have 97.6 or something percent of the global supply chain for rare metals, it's because they use the traditional process. They use something called unstabilized chemistry, meaning they're pumping in electricity, they're pumping in energy, they're pumping in whatever it is to be able to produce the final metal as fast as they can in an unregulated way. I don't mean regulation from a governmental standpoint, but I mean like from an actual technical standpoint. And you can't really do that in the Western world because you're discharging HF fumes into workers' faces, right? That if you use Chinese process. Like, yeah, there's ways to mitigate it. There's ways to protect against that. But like at the end of the day, you're still dealing with that type of thing. And you have to spend way more on capital expenditures to be able to build the safety features in place so you don't have that exposure. We fundamentally looked at the problem and said, well, we can't do it this way. Let's reinvent how we actually do this under the underlying way. We found the underlying core chemistry that focuses on the system. We saw the errors in the initial models that were created back in the 80s on how you actually do the chemistry of the system and designed something called stabilized chemistry. This is Dr. Tomas's bread and butter. This is really his field of chemistry that he developed from scratch, part of his PhD, and what we've really taken out of this ecosystem to really pioneer and scale. And this is our third generation system that we're operating here in New Hampshire. We acquired the technology from a company called a company called Infinium Metal. We bought a bunch of their equipment, mined that with our novel chemistry, and that's really what we've been able to really develop and show. And we produce that today at commercial volumes. We're looking to scale it even further, but the fact is we took really, really smart people, looked at a problem in a creative approach, and spent the past 8 years combining old technology with our new approach to be able to demonstrate and de-risk that. And thankfully, God bless us, we're at the right stage now at the right time in the market. So we're not only scaling, but we're already producing at commercial volumes. We're one of the largest producers of the metal, and we're looking to be able to help the world actually make an impact,
So I would say, if we look at refining, this is the major bottleneck, as you know, and as we report on. Would you say that Phoenix Tailings is the number one midstream refiner in the United States today?
I never try to claim like number one or number two or specific things like that. What I will say is right now the market needs everyone to produce at full speed. And I would say that we're one of the top players, if not the top, but I think one of the top players able to produce actually at large volumes, and specifically focusing on this oxide to metal stage, which is a very, very key, often overlooked stage. That's an area where we really thrive. And I would say that oxide to metal conversion, yeah, there's really not a question that one we're the best in the world. But as refining operations, MP or USA Rare Earths, a lot of these players are producing material. I don't know if we're better or worse than them, but I think all of us need to be successful to really have this whole market.
%. Can you talk a little bit more about the oxide to metal process? Like very clear for any, there's lay people that come on too. I think it's very important. We agree with you on that.
Absolutely. So just to put things in simple terms with how we see the rare earth value chain, right? You have concentrate production. That's digging the hole in the ground. These are mining operations, whether it's traditional mining or it's recycling magnets. You really all produce the same thing, which is a concentrate. Our grand scheme is long-term to be able to produce that from tailings or mining waste, but it's still concentrate. That's a mixture of all 17 different rare earth elements, all, of course, with their impronounceable names. but in carbonate or oxide form. And the next stage of that is you have to take that concentrate and split it to the individual rare earth oxides.
Yes.
Now, oxide is great, but it's not the final form. You can't make a magnet with oxide. Oftentimes, we loop them together with magnet production because it's, it's a complicated stage, but you need to actually convert the oxide into a metal, which then goes into strip casting, which eventually goes into the magnet production itself. And that oxide to metal stage is one of the key areas that China's really dominated this global market in because of its environmental impacts, because of its worker safety concerns, because of the energy consumption and the cost to be able to produce. They've really controlled that oxide to metal stage. And that's where we double down on with our technology, is saying, hey, look, if we want to have a global supply chain, someone has to solve this problem of oxide to metal conversion. And that looks like a pure raw technical problem that we, when we started, could bring in the best and the brightest from MIT to actually solve this problem. And that's what we did. And of course, we do separation and we do the concentration as well. But many players are looking at those sectors. But really where we differentiate is our ability to really deliver that oxide to metal stage, very clean, economic, and scalable fashion that actually delivers value for the world. And that's what we have to have solved if anyone wants to have a value chain operating.
100%. Now, on that note, now I know on the separation side, sometimes, at least in China, there are different processes for separating the different rare earth elements. When you're going, Nick, oxide to metals, is it similar, or can you consolidate it into one technological process, or are there different processes for different rare earth elements?
I am so sorry. I could not hear you.
You were breaking up, Daniel.
Sorry, let me try that again. Nick, how with separation, there are different processes in China for different rare earth elements, correct? Dustin, go ahead and take it over and let's
Hey,
reconnect.
Daniel, will you turn off your camera for a little bit?
Yes.
You're a bit behind. Okay, while we're waiting for him, could you talk about where you get most of your feedstock from?
With pleasure. We actually source all of our feedstock ex-China from US, Canada, Australia, and South America.
Wow. And what of that feedstock is probably the most common?
Well, you have mining. So we have a split between mining and recycled material, and we generally source oxides. I'd say it's split between US, Australia, and South America quite extensively. Canada has some, but it's not fully online yet. And you're starting to see more and more from these regions. We obviously try to prioritize the United States as much as we can, because we are a U.S. company, U.S. DNA, I'm an American citizen. Everything was U.S. We're built in New England, where America was founded. Like, let's be America all the way through. But we also like to work as much with parties as we can, and believe that collaboration is key to success for this industry.
Yeah, Nick, my question was, with separation, we know in China that they've developed processes to separate different rare earth elements in different ways, and that's part of their proprietary advantage. And the question is, when it comes to oxide to metals, is it similar in that you have different processes for different rare earth element base metals, or is it one process once you consolidate it to that point?
Yeah, it's a great question, Daniel. So functionally speaking, oxide to metal conversion has underlying differences in chemistry per oxide. There are similar aspects to it, right? Some parts, the equipment stays the same. We've developed a system where the equipment is pretty much identical for most of them. There's two different types of equipment, and we match them accordingly to the metal as well. But we produce dysprosium ferroalloy and NdPr alloy in the same cell, for example. Not at the same time. You switch out the chemistry underneath it, but you can produce it in the same cell given the different parameters. It's all about optimizing your economics when you choose which metal. Right? Some metals like terbium, you need to optimize for energy usage and for yields, whereas other materials that are lower value in price, you're focusing more on throughput. It just depends a little on how you want to operate it. But functionally speaking, you can swap in the cells quite easily using our type of technology, not with the Chinese technology. The Chinese technology is beholden to the individual.
So with that, what would you say is harder right now? Is it the technology development of your guys' process, or is it securing the long-term offtake agreements to keep going?
Well, our technology is pretty much done from an iteration standpoint. Like, yeah, we always come up with new tech every day, but that's what happens when you have a team of 50 different, well, now it's like that's almost 100, but 50 of them are MIT scientists. They come up with new stuff every day. That's what happens.
Yeah.
So, but I would say that in general, we're focused more on scaling our capacity of our production. So we have very solid demand on output, right? That's really good. Like there's no one saying in this rare earth market today that anyone's lacking in demand from a customer. It's finding the right partners to scale with that'll work with you on the capacity constraints and how to best build this market ex China, because it is a whole industry. It requires the end customers at the end of the day to drive most of the engagement, right? That's a key thing. But really for us, it's about increasing capacity, finding the right partners to be able to do that with.
So when you say increasing capacity and partners, is this like physical space? Like you need like additional warehouses and all that and get
Well,
them to like,
part of it, right? So
okay.
it's about building it more units. There's a lot to it, right? Building capacity. I use that term as an overarching term, but remember, you're building a whole industry here. It's not just like me turning on one thing and then magically the whole market works, right? There's been no rare earth processing in the United States, so you have to build a whole industry. That's the primary, secondary, and tertiary parts of the value chain have to come together, right? So for us, we have a facility in New Hampshire, right? It's currently producing at 200 metric tons per year of metal output, dysprosium, ferro, and NdPr. We'll be adding in additional DYTB, yttrium, germanium, gallium, and a few other materials into that processing as well. But that'll go from 200 metric tons to over 1,000 tons of output in that building. Now, to do that, you have to increase power output, like power infrastructure to the facility itself. You have to build more cells. All of that requires capital, partners to do each part of it, different people coming together. And it's really that ecosystem that really comes together. I think people often forget that no one can do this on their own. That's insane, right? It requires a whole industry. So we work as much as we can as possible with the whole industry, and sometimes convincing people that don't operate in this sector, please, 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 will you start providing material in this sector? Will you start operating here? Will you work with us to scale it up, and thinking creatively about how to do that, right? For example, most of our equipment is machined and built in New England. And I'll tell you, they didn't build rare earth processing stuff before. They built different type of systems, oftentimes for medical devices, which has no relationship to rare earths at all. But they're really, really smart. They know how to build a system. They understand how temperature controls, how you need to be very, very tuned into very fine specific motions, because medical device pharmaceuticals are very regulated. And we're taking that type of technology and saying, hey, please shift your approach and build it for us in rare earth metals. They ask what rare earth metals are, but outside of that, it's going pretty good.
Yeah, I think you made an interesting point, and one that's probably often overlooked or not given the credit that it needs is when it comes to the rare earth industry, the entire supply chain is required to make
Yeah.
it work.
Uh-huh.
Mines don't function if they don't have people who can take the stuff. Processors don't have a job if they don't have a mine or a client on the other end to buy it. Like it all just comes together and in a beautiful harmony in a way. But I think we get so caught up in one segment of the supply chain where we're just like, we have a mine here in the United States, we're good. Or we have someone who's doing the recycling, we're good. But that's not necessarily true, because we need everyone to play and participate. So I think that was a good point
Thank you so much.
that
It's
you
really
brought up.
true. Like you have so many parts of this value chain. It's just, you have to build an industry, right? Like that's the thing. And it's an exciting opportunity because folks like ourselves, right? And like NEMPs and Ucors and USA Rare Earths and all the other players, right? Like, candidly, we get to build something from nothing. Like, how many times in your life do you really get to do this and actually make an impact for good on the planet? Like, this is awesome. We're pretty excited
Yeah,
about this opportunity.
absolutely. So on that note, we're building an industry. We've talked here on the show many times that we need industrial policy to kind of help create a path, remove the roadblocks that exist. From your perspective at Phoenix Tailings, how impacted are you by the lack of industrial policy, or is it more of everyone else in the value chain that is impacted by the lack of that?
It's a thought-provoking question, Dustin. Though I probably wouldn't phrase it that way, though, if you don't mind me saying so. I think the reason people say, hey, we need industrial policy around rare earths in the United States is because the free market isn't quite operating effectively. You're expecting to operate at full massive scale of a fully grown market while you have what's called negative externalities by a foreign government. This is a term used in econ very often when you talk about macroeconomic policies. Negative externality means there's something outside of the free market that's factoring in here. And obviously, with the current administration, they're very laissez-faire economics or Hayek's principles of economics, free market economy. But you need to have intervention to be able to prevent the negative externality, right? So China intervening in the market and manipulating pricing, for example, on metals, right? So what they do oftentimes is the oxide price is higher than the metal price. And basic economics tells you that's not physically possible, right? So if that means Jesus can't make a margin because you're going to have a negative processing capability, right? So obviously something's wrong. Now, when you have that, that's where you say, hey, U.S. government, maybe we step in and say, hey, like let's come together and say, hey, no, let's not do dumping let's impose anti-dumping regulations on China. Let's be tough. Let's make sure there is an actual functioning economy here in the United States for rare earths. That's where I think the gap is today. And I think everyone's impacted by perhaps not having that, but I think it's more impacted by the fact that China is actively intervening from a governmental level on private markets. And that's the area where we would say, hey, maybe we do need some support, because Phoenix Tailings here in New Hampshire and Boston, Massachusetts is probably not strong enough to go up against China every single day. Now, I'll tell you right now, we will try. We will go fight the fight as much as we can for the American people. But I would tell you it'd be probably pretty helpful if U.S. government and other partners, not just the U.S. government, but like end customers come in to help and say, hey, let's go lend a hand in this fight.
Absolutely. And so speaking of, U.S. intervention or help, this year's been pretty remarkable in terms of change that's happening. Has any of those changes been pretty monumental for you guys at Phoenix Tailings?
Yeah, I think honestly, when the MP deal happened with U.S. Gov, like that galvanized the whole sector. Now, all of a sudden, the whole world's looking at rare earths. I think I have my grandma calling me and asking about rare earths now. It's great. I think there's obviously challenges. I don't want to highlight or say positive or negative things about specific policy movements and how the government does things. Right? I couldn't tell you, right? I leave the policy to the policymakers. Right? That's not my thing here. But what I will tell you is from a layman who goes and fights the Chinese government every day, and to build an economy here in the United States to make sure the American people have access to the raw materials that they need to function on a daily basis. I am very excited to see what's going on in this sector, and we've been waiting for it for a while, because now everyone is at least focused on the sector, and now it's an opportunity to really make a long-lasting impact. I know the world has had a few chances at doing this in the past where Chinese have shut off supply and then brought it back on again and back and forth. But now I really do feel that the world is looking at this, and it's our opportunity to really make an impact and do something for good for the world, and do this in the right way that has a long-lasting sustainment for our global society. And we're pretty proud to be at least one of the players fighting that fight.
Absolutely. And I love that, because when we've done research and we've read a lot about what goes on in the process and how a lot of it's not sustainable or healthy for the environment, like finding alternative sources to get the same thing is just paramount. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job at fighting the good fight, which we love here. So looking, with, we're talking about policy and things like that, and the MP Materials deal definitely sparked a lot of interest from investors, retail investors. Are you guys looking to capitalize on some of that? Do you need more investment from other people? Or are you guys, you're set and you're ready to go with your existing partners?
Honestly, so we've been debating that for a little while. We're not raising capital right now, just for full transparency. However, we're looking at it and saying, look, we really need to make an impact on this world. So likely speaking, we're going to go out in a big way, is one of the things that we're thinking. So we're trying to think about how do we go as fast as we can now? Look, the technology's proven, the operation's proven, we can produce. Let's find the partners that can help scale and go to that massive level where we can really make an impact at a global stage. And that's, I think, one of the things that's coming up. We're still evaluating how best to do that with the right partners and who to do it with and how to structure it and all the different details. Look, the market needs players making metal, and there are not that many people doing it at the end of the day. And I believe with our technology and our approach and our mindset, we're one of the top leaders in the sector. And again, with the right partners, not just investment partners, but customer partners, with the right supply partners, with the right collaboration partners. Look, I think it's important for us to go as fast as we can.
Absolutely. So speaking of going fast, I do feel like there's a misconception that can be put out there that things just happen in an instant. And in this space, it's just absolutely not true. To get a mine operational is like 18 years. To get a permit takes 3 years.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. So when you're talking about scaling and building out the infrastructure that you need, what kind of timeline are we looking at? What is your runway for this?
Yeah. So you have to remember, our DNA is in startup DNA. I don't think in terms of 15 years. Like, that's not even in my mindset. I think up until last year, we only ever had a runway for 12 months of life ever. So I'm not thinking in that many years, right? That's just our nature. So I think there's the term that someone threw around the other day, and I really liked it, right? The Chinese move at Chinese speed, which everyone refers to as fast. And I'd like to say that, we here in the US, we move at American speed, which is faster, right? So we're trying to move as quick as we can. I'm talking the next 2 years, we'll have major operations at global level where we can beat the Chinese at their own thing. I think we could do it this year if we can get the right support and the right approach. But hey, I'll be conservative and say 2 years we'll be able to to crush them.
Wow, 2 years. I would say that's pretty fast. And it's a lot faster than we've heard from a lot of other people. There's just a lot of roadblocks and red tape that they've got to overcome.
Yeah.
So,
But it's about building the right path through those roadblocks, right? I'll give you an example, right? For us, we looked at the refining stage of the business. If you were to take Chinese process and try to get a permit in the United States, A, you'd probably never get a permitted. And B, if you did, it'd only be in certain jurisdictions and it would probably take you a few years. From the time we signed the lease in our building in New Hampshire to the time first metal came out the door, under 6 months. And that's the beauty of investing in technology. Now, I will comment, Justin, that I'm not talking about the 20 years of technology development took to get there, but the 6 months, it was very good. So we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah. Okay. When you put it in perspective, yeah, the 20 years to even get to where you're at today. Yeah. That's awesome. So what you guys are building is novel. It's a zero emissions approach. Are you licensing any of this to other people? Or, are you trying to help other businesses kind of level up their game as well? Or is it just, we have the solution, contract with us?
Yeah, no, I always phrase this. I'm not smart enough for licensing. I don't really know how that works. It's very confusing. So we're a technology first producer. Like we look to be the end game producing the final metal and metal alloys. That's what's exciting. That's our goal. We have novel technology, right? That's what we do. We invest very heavily in technology, but I think that you need to be a major tech focused company in order to be successful as a producer in the sector. And that's why we're able to be at the level of some major players while being originally substantially smaller and now growing substantially faster. That speed comes from the technology, just like SpaceX and Tesla, Amazon and those players, right? You need to be able to operate like that. And that's the key thing with the sector. If we bring that startup mentality that Elon brought to Tesla to the rare earth supply chain, we'll be in good shape.
Sweet. I love that. So with that, the mentality of a startup, I feel like you said you've got about 100 people on the payroll right now?
Yeah,
Give
or take a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Is it just like a hive of energy? Is just everyone just like excited about what's happening, new technologies that are maybe enabling more things? Like, what's it like a day-to-day there at the office?
Very fast-paced. I think folks that come in are pretty shocked a little, like when they see the space, when they see what's going on, because when you think metals processing, right, you're not thinking rapid startup, top technology leaders, right? People that don't sleep at night. Like we're talking, generally speaking, you think like old school industrial, you go home from work at 3 p.m., you take your shovel back to the house, right? That's what you think, right? It's definitely not what we are, right? We have the best and the brightest, baby. Like we got people working every day from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Long hours, long time frames, fast pace, crazy deliverables that you'd see put in front of us, right? We bring the same mentality you have at Google, Amazon, or Tesla at SpaceX. We try to bring that to this sector. And that's really what it's like. We've been able to use that to recruit some top tier folks. We just had a CFO join from Draper. So she went from building missiles over at Draper to now Phoenix and taking that knowledge and mindset to this sector. We have some other top folks that'll be able to publicize relatively soon coming on board with this radical new mindset to really bring this approach to the rare earth sector. And that's how we're going to be successful.
That's awesome. And it's really exciting. I think as we've been talking, it sounds like there's just a lot of energy. There's a lot of passion for not only what you guys are doing specifically, but for the industry as a whole. And as the saying goes, all tides lift all boats, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And so I just can only imagine that the work you guys are doing for the industry and as a company will just kind of elevate everything around it.
That's cool.
Which is really exciting. So to kind of just wrap this up, to put everything into perspective, what would you say, what are you most excited about Phoenix Tailings? What are you looking forward to over the next 5 years? I know you just said you don't think much more beyond 12 months, but like
they're hard.
What are you excited about over the next several years?
Look, I'm really excited. Over the next 18, 24 months, our whole goal is to build additional factories and expand up the value chain to get to the tailings. The way I see it is once you're processing material from tailings, right? So right now we do primarily oxide to metal conversion. At the commercial scale, that's what we do. Yes, we have technology. We have pilot operations on separation. We have pilot operations on extraction. We have the full stack. Yeah, of course. But that oxide to metal conversions are a big commercial operation. The next phase will be to expand separation, to be able to take concentrates from many different mining operations, not just one. That's a big key differentiation of what we do, and be able to process that all the way to metal. That technology has been de-risked, and we're scaling that up right now with key partners. But that'll be really exciting when that happens in the near future. But once you get to tailings, once you can process all this waste material that's just sitting all around the United States and get those trace materials, that unlocks huge amount of value. Not just rare earths, right? We're talking copper, nickel, cobalt, lithium, zirconium, like all these different materials that historically have been just supply chain restricted because you just can't get access to it. The processing's tough. They're high cost. They're in places that don't make sense, like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, right? Like it's just tough. And once you get to tailings, you could unlock this for the whole world in a way that takes mining from being one of the worst sectors on the planet to being a net positive where you're cleaning up things. Like, that's amazing. That's what I get excited about. That's why I did this job for 2 years for free. Now I get paid. That's great. But like, that's what gets us up in the morning every day, you know?
That's awesome. And Nick, I can, your energy and your passion is just like palpable. Like I love it. I love talking with you. This is so fun. So for those who want to learn more, connect with you, how should they go about finding you? What's a good place for them to go?
Absolutely. So our website, redesigned website, very nice. It was a great job. My team did a great job on it. I was very excited. It took like 6 years for us to actually do that. But anyway, there's a contact us link. I assure you, we have a human being looking at that every single message you send. So reach out to us on that. Follow us on LinkedIn. We do have people monitoring and looking at this. If you just send any note, I assure you we'll get back to you. And someone real will get back to you, not just a robot somewhere, shape, or form. So we'd be honored to collaborate, whether it's new hires coming on to look to join Phoenix, whether it's potential partners on sales side, feedstock side, partners that want to trial new technology with us and they have an idea that they want to partner with. Like, we always love working with new tech players and finding ways to collaborate. It's very exciting. Or industrial producers that are saying, hey, like, let's find a way to be in on how the next generation of earth processing, or investors that are looking to scale, or anyone in general. Like, hey, just reach out. We'd be honored to chat. Collaborations, key part to what we do, and we're excited to be around the sector.
Perfect. Yes. Like I said, well, I was just saying, all tides lift all boats. Like, yeah, that's exactly what you guys are doing. I love that. For those who are listening, if you've liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up. It'll help expose the show to more listeners. If you don't want to miss a future episode, like and subscribe. You'll get an alert the next time an episode comes out. Nick, thank you so much for joining us here on the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast. Truly insightful and very exciting to listen to all that you guys are doing. Hopefully we'll have you again on the show for an update, see how things are going, and hopefully we'll have another 12-month roadmap to hear about.
Absolutely, Dustin. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks.